austerity, and political tumult. By early 2010, Greece was rapidly diverging toward default. The European Union, European Central Bank, ECB, and International Monetary Fund, IMF, often dubbed the Troika, stepped in. On the 2nd of May 2010, the first bailout package of €110 billion was agreed, coupled with draconian austerity, deep spending cuts, tax hikes, pension reforms. The Memorandum of Understanding accompanying the bailout spelled out sweeping structural reforms, privatizations, wage reductions, deregulation, and a promise by Greece to run primary surpluses, that is, budget surplus before interest payments, for years to come. But the austerity inflicted a deep recession. GDP plunged, unemployment soared, social services collapsed. By 2012, Greece's economy had shrunk by more than 20% from its 2008 peak. Unemployment peaked above 27%. Youth unemployment in some regions exceeded 50%. In 2011, in a dramatic move, Papandreou proposed a referendum on the second bailout, rocking markets. He later rescinded it. Papandreou resigned, and a technocratic government under Loukas Papademos stepped in. In early 2012, in the largest sovereign restructuring in history, Greece executed a haircut, write-down, of about 53.5% on privately held bonds and recapitalized its banking sector. The deal aimed to reduce Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio to about 120% by 2020. Yet despite repeated bailouts, 2010, 2012, 2015, Greece remained shackled by debt. In 2015, the radical Syriza government and leader Alexis Tsipras clashed with creditors over further austerity, eventually agreeing to a third bailout under harsh terms. Finally, in 2018, Greece exited the last bailout program, but with strings attached: continued oversight by European institutions, conditions on its budget, and the promise to run surpluses until 2060. Through it all, something paradoxical happened. Greece technically avoided full default, but at such social cost that many called it a partial self-liquidation of national promise. Human cost, political shocks, emigration. The crisis reshaped Greek society. Economic contraction and poverty. Real GDP fell from approximately €65 billion 2010 baseline to approximately €45 billion by 2013. A drop of over 30% in real terms. Unemployment and brain drain. As noted, overall unemployment peaked near 27%. More pernicious, educated Greeks fled abroad in search of opportunity. The lost generation became a tragic narrative. Political upheaval. Traditional parties, PASOK, New Democracy, lost dominance. Syriza, an anti-austerity, leftist coalition, rose to power in 2015. Populism and polarization surged. Social strain, public services shrank. Healthcare access worsened. Suicide rates, homelessness, and despair rose. Inequality widened. Debt load persists. Even after exiting the bailout, Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio hovered above 150%. Many questioned whether the reset was real or symbolic. European institutions argued that Greece was now reformed, but critics pointed out that the austerity had suppressed growth and made debt servicing even harder. Failed fixes and structural dilemmas. Over its crisis decade, Greece tried many paths, but most were compromises with paradoxical results. Privatization. Selling state assets, ports, airports, energy companies, was supposed to raise revenue, but often prices were weak, buyer conditions strict, and the gains insufficient to dent debt. Structural reforms, labor market liberalization, pension system overhauls, regulatory changes were mandated, but implementing them was politically fraught, resistance, corruption, and partial compliance undermined impact. Debt restructuring. The 2012 haircut was historic, but much of the remaining debt remained with official institutions, EU lenders, that could not realistically absorb losses the way private bondholders might. Deferred interest and extended maturities. Creditors allowed Greece to delay or extend payments. But this just stretched the burden into far future, increasing total interest cost and locking Greece into longer servitude. Supervisory oversight and conditionality. Greece remained under the constant gaze of European troika monitors or their successors. Many critics argued that Greece was no longer an independent democracy in fiscal matters. In effect, many fixes became new cages, each concession reducing Greece's space to maneuver. One twist: some economists contend that the creditors weren't just rescuing Greece, they were rescuing their own banks. By pushing austerity rather than straightforward debt forgiveness, creditors shifted much of the burden onto society. Greece became the instrument through which European banks, especially in Germany and France, were stabilized. The crisis also exposed fragility in the euro system itself. A single monetary policy for countries with vastly different economic structures made peripheral nations vulnerable when shocks hit. The lack of a federal fiscal backstop in the Eurozone became painfully clear. And the final twist: while Greece was made the poster child of fiscal recklessness, many other Eurozone states, Italy, Spain, Portugal, also had weak growth and high debt. The fear of contagion meant that decisions about Greece were really decisions about the future of the euro. Connect to modern parallels and shocking data. This isn't just a Greek story, it's a warning. Debt burdens rising worldwide. Many emerging and developed economies now carry sovereign debt to GDP ratios well above 100%. Hidden liabilities and creative accounting. Nations sometimes understate pension obligations, off-balance guarantees, or use complex financial derivatives to mask risk, just as Greece once did. Euro-like constraints. Countries that abandon monetary flexibility, currency pegs, unions, limit their ability to respond to crisis. Greece's inability to devalue was fatal. Conditional bailout traps. As in Greece's case, rescue packages often come with strict structural conditions. Nations that accept them may lose policy autonomy, political backlash, and polarization. Austerity breeds populism, fragmentation, and social unrest. These forces are active in many nations now. Consider some data. In 2025, Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio remains at approximately 160%. The IMF and European institutions still project Greece must run primary surpluses until 2060 to stabilize its debt. During 2007 to 2013, Greece's cumulative GDP contraction was among the deepest in modern times. Peak-to-trough drop greater than 25%. But beyond Greece, look at Argentina, Sri Lanka, Lebanon. Their crises rest on similar fault lines: unstable finances, inability to borrow, political crisis, external dependencies. Greece's lessons are being replayed. One startling pattern: countries often delay facing the problem until it's enormous. Early warning signals, rising spreads, credit constraints, public sector deficits are ignored until sudden stops. By then, the only option is bailout or collapse. 3 clear takeaways. So warning, open thought, call to action. 3 takeaways. Debt is not free money. Borrowing can finance investment, but when used to sustain consumption, prop up unsustainable pensions, or paper over bad accounting, it becomes a time bomb. Greece's decades of structural deficits financed growth illusions, but at enormous future cost. Locking yourself into policy constraints is perilous. Greece's adoption of the euro removed its monetary sovereignty. It lost the flexibility of competitive devaluation, interest rate control, or inflationary escape routes. A nation that cedes fiscal or monetary levers is forced to endure external discipline. Rescue with strings can become new chains. The bailouts Greece accepted came with austerity, oversight, and conditional reforms that limited sovereignty. Often, they shifted risk from creditors to citizens. In practice, such rescues may repackage subjugation as salvation. A warning, or open-ended thought. Greece didn't collapse overnight, and the world barely paused as it sold off one future promise at a time. The real danger isn't the debt itself, it's that nations gradually surrender autonomy, consent to permanent constraints, and accept the narrative that there is no alternative. The story of Greece warns that even advanced democracies can lose control when complacency, opaque accounting, and external dependencies converge. Are we watching similar patterns today? Hidden debt, deferred accounting, conditional bailouts, playing out in other nations? If the next crisis demands austerity, who pays? Who benefits? Will the lessons of Greece be heeded or ignored? Natural call to action. If this story piqued your curiosity, I encourage you to dive deeper. Read Crashed by Adam Tooze for a sweeping account of the financial crisis and its European repercussions, including Greece. Explore public debt data for your country. What is the real deficit? Are there off-balance sheet liabilities? Share this video with someone who thinks sovereign debt is just abstract, because the Greek story shows it's deeply human. If you found this enlightening, hit like, share, and subscribe, because more stories like this need to be told. And drop a comment. Which modern country do you think mirrors the Greek path? Let's talk.